Hi, my name is Elle and you're listening to Specimens Podcast. I'm really excited about today's episode, and I know I say that at the start of every single one, but this episode is the first time I've ever recorded a live interview in person with my guests. I feel incredibly lucky to be able to speak with people all across the globe about their work, but there was something really special about sitting opposite these two guests, laughing together and being able to look them in their eyes without the glitch of a poor internet connection. But before I bring you the teaser for today's episode, I want to tell you a little bit more about this podcast if you're new to it. When I started out as a taxidermist, I found that I was constantly having to defend and unpack my job title. Now, I don't blame people for not knowing what it is that I do. It is pretty uncommon, and there aren't that many of us across the world doing this kind of work. But it got me thinking about other people doing interesting or unconventional roles in the conservation world. There must be other people who are working behind the scenes, doing good, hard work that don't get represented in mainstream media. So this started off as a bit of a passion project, trying to find those people and amplify their voices, in the hope that these conversations might inspire people into roles they didn't know existed. I've been very lucky to speak to people across the globe doing incredible work, from forensic pathologists to rewilding pioneers, paleo artists to natural history illustrators. And today I bring you two incredible storytellers of our natural world, Harry Reid and Edwin Towler, who are the two parts that make up Gone Feral, a wildlife and adventure series on YouTube, sometimes tackling complex or controversial subjects from the field of conservation. Harry and Ed use a combination of humor, their incredible on-screen chemistry, and curiosity to lead them to tackling these really interesting conversations in a hilarious and brilliant way. And to give you just a flavour of the type of content that they're producing, I'm going to play you the trailer for a project they've been working really hard on recently in collaboration with Leica Optics. Ilves, The Search for a Ghost, an epic wildlife adventure that took them deep into the boreal forest in Finland in the search for the elusive Eurasian lynx. Now, they don't talk about it in our conversation together, so you're going to have to listen to the end of the episode to find out more about this and where you can watch it.
Finland is vast, the perfect place to hide if you're a large predator.
And now our old friend Ossie is helping guide us on his home turf in our quest to see a lynx.
It would be a dream come true. So have you ever seen a large predator on foot?
I haven't.
If I saw one, I think I could die happy. There are some really fresh moose droppings.
I'm slightly worried about running into a moose. What do you do?
After the first sighting, it took me 3 years to see it again.
3 years?
Yeah.
Got something in the field.
Oh, that was so exciting.
Everything points to lynx being here. Ed, up here. Look at this.
You could live your whole life here and never see a lynx.
That is the most gorgeous animal I've ever seen in my life.
It gives me great pleasure to have two friends on the show here live at Global Birdfair. And rather than doing a terrible job of introducing them myself, I'm going to hand over to Harry and Ed to introduce themselves for you.
Hello, thank you for having us. It's
Thank
great
you.
to be here.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, should we say who's who if people are listening and not watching? So I'm Edwin, and sat next to me is...
Harry.
You had to
Harry.
think about that for a second.
I'm Harry, yeah.
Yes, you're Harry.
I'm the one with the slightly higher voice, high-pitched voice.
Dulcet tones.
For those, yeah, exactly. I'm going to try and intonate. And
It's more like a band intro, so I'm Ed and he's Harry, but together we are Gone Feral. And that's our brand of how we release all of our wildlife stories.
Which is exactly why I've brought you here, and we're going to go straight into it. Before you tell us about Gone Feral, let's go right back. So, there are two individuals sat before me. You have two very individual routes into the space, so one after the other. Just tell me a little bit about how you came to what you do today, a little bit of your conservation background. Let's get into it. Ed.
Oh, me first, okay.
Summoned.
I leant back ready for Harry to take the lead. Ed. Well, I didn't actually study conservation or zoology. I studied design. So my angle at looking at things was always to do with problem solving and building things, and hopefully with some creativity attached. And my route into the wildlife stuff was through photography, because that was a nice way where you could bring in the technical element and the creative element and throw it towards a wildlife subject. So from doing that evolved into then doing the filmmaking, which I started doing with Harry. So it wasn't...
Big mistake.
That's when trouble started.
Exactly. But if you want to go right back, I grew up in West Africa and the Middle East. So from that, I didn't realise at the time, but apparently it's quite unusual to have things like forest elephants visiting your garden or stealing your mangoes and things. But in hindsight, that probably got me quite excited and interested in the natural world. And then I think it was photography and filmmaking that gave me, unlocked a way to fully embrace that and to do something with it.
I would have been really sad if you'd said that didn't spark an interest in the natural world.
Despite that, no. That put me off of anything.
Well, I'm not sure if Harry can compete with monkeys stealing mangoes, but I'm going to give you a try.
I definitely can. It's a little bit exotic. I'm going to start with an exotic species. My parents used to. They're coming tomorrow, actually.
Cannot
my parents. Wait. Yeah, you're going to meet them. They
Shout out to Sally.
Sally and Rich.
Sally and Richard. They used to buy from Worldwide Butterflies. They used to buy eggs, butterfly eggs, and they would hatch them in our house, usually in the hanging cages. So when I was a 6, 7, 8-year-old boy, I vividly remember my mum with a giant atlas moth on both hands on her face. You know, the standard thing on the front of the local paper.
Let me just interject for those that might be listening that don't know the size of an atlas moth. Let's just dig a little deeper on that.
You're good at the descriptive stuff. So, giant atlas moth, size of a dinner plate, roughly.
Really big.
They vary slightly, but they're an absolutely gargantuan insect, especially when it's on your hand or on your face. So,
but harmless, right?
Absolutely harmless. Absolutely incredible thing. A sort of engagement method. So both of my parents were big naturalists, and my dad especially, he used to spend all of his time outside. So naturally, I would gravitate towards it as we do as children, because we're quite open-minded and very curious. And I used to go fishing, so we'd go and sit by the banks of the lake and we'd be there to catch fish, carp or rudd or roach, whatever it was. And I would usually sit there with Dad until about 8, 9 o'clock. I'd fall asleep, after watching bats and not helping at all in the fishing. And then I'd wake up the next morning, Ed likes this story, I'd wake up the next morning and say, Dad, what did we catch? And he'd fill me in on all of his endeavours overnight. But that was
really, we're giving credit to your dad.
My dad, my parents, my route in. My grandparents were the same, Coral and Robin, very, very natural names, I suppose. But they were both big advocates for the natural world and had great environmental morals, as everyone should. But yeah, that was my routine. And now I'm an ecologist. So I work for a big estate in Suffolk, and I do a lot with local people. Get a lot of school groups in. I obviously monitor, survey the wildlife on the estate, and I've been a wildlife photographer since I was about 12 years old. So I spent many years of my childhood riding around on a push bike. Not as exciting as forest elephants, but barn owls are still pretty sexy, I think. So.
I think Harry always undersells himself. He forgot to say he is a zoologist with a degree in zoology. And when he says he's an ecologist on an estate, that's 8,000 acres that Harry is the sole ecologist manager for. He's a very impressive man.
Thank you, I forget.
And this is the bromance that I want to explore.
It ends there.
Nearly spat my water there.
So you segued really nicely, Ed, by bringing in Harry's glory, and I'd like to talk a little bit about how you two then became friends and came into a partnership together, which is called Gone Feral.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, when I first met Harry, he was living in a little burrow at the bottom of an oak tree. The rest of his herd had abandoned him. But
why does that not surprise me?
We call it the Shire.
You can tell. And he didn't speak much English. He didn't speak much anything.
You've been waiting 5 years to do this.
But we managed to communicate, and it was nice. So I took him under my wing and gave him a camera, and he was very good with it.
We'll stop that there. That's not how it happened at all. It was a simple DM on Instagram.
You don't want the truth?
Ooh, you slide into your DMs.
I really appreciate this.
Boys behave.
It was an Instagram DM. And Ed was, a real novice filmmaker at this point. He knew how to switch a camera on, but it ended there. So I sort of said to him, I'll guide you on the Isle of Mull. And we were going to split petrol money and drive up to Mull together. And we started talking while we were there about wildlife film and various things.
That's one angle on the story. Mine was I was going to film otters anyway. So I put out on Instagram saying, would anybody like to come and help share the petrol? And then Harry, he wouldn't leave me alone from then on. So we thought, we'll give him a chance. And that's how it happened. So we went to find otters on Mull. And that's how we got to know each other on that long 9 to 12 hour drive.
Exactly. It's an amazing island, and obviously we're not local to Mull, but I spent quite a long time there growing up. doing a lot of wildlife photography. So we went to some of the fantastic spots for otters, and we saw white-tailed eagle, hen harriers, short-eared owls, and it was like a 3 or 4 day mission, really, and that was where it started.
I've seen it unfold before my very eyes over the last 10 minutes, but clearly humour is something that you guys use, whether you're doing it consciously or not, you can answer that. But how do you then use that to tell your stories and communicate the magic of the natural world in a way that feels relatable? Tell me about that.
Great question. So one of the first things that both of us, I'll let Ed continue because he's very eloquent when he describes this, but it shows that a very general. You take Gone Fishing or Clarkson's Farm. It's a show about fishing and a show about farming, but you're following there for the characters and the humour. You're taking fence sitters who might not necessarily be interested in farming or interested in fishing, but suddenly they're converted, and then you have your audience there, and then you can convert them. And that's the way we tried to do it when we set out with the natural world and wildlife film.
It's also because we didn't really have any other options. If you want to make something that is a beautiful cinematic way of showcasing animal behaviour, that's been done far better by a whole load of incredible talent within the natural history world. So we thought if we ended up trying to do anything similar, we'd just make something that's a bit rubbish and no one's going to engage with that. So what could we do with just the two of us, especially during COVID times, where rather than it being a disadvantage that it's all a bit janky and shaky and out of focus, how can we try and change that to appear more charming and more broad appeal? So that's why we were forced down that route, but it ended up working quite well for us because it gave us all the agility and nimbleness that we needed to tell stories which we perhaps might have otherwise left alone. Yeah,
overlooked. I think it was the same for everyone during COVID, and you were noticing things that maybe you didn't pay as much attention to before. So for me, it was barn owls in the meadows behind my parents' house, which is where I was living, and I would see these things quartering the meadows every night in gorgeous golden light. So it was my daily walk, I think, that I was allowed. I would wander out and study these birds. It was a real nice way of getting back to basics in wildlife photography, fieldcraft, working out where these birds were hunting, where they were moving. So they're quite predictable, barn owls, in the way that they quarter fields. Anyway, I was photographing barn owls, and you were in London, weren't you?
Yeah, I was doing foxes. So this was our very first film we made after we'd had this bolt of energy to go, let's make some videos. Then COVID happened, so we were both stuck at home. So Harry's locale was full of owls, which is fantastic, and mine wasn't. I was full of big red buses and not very much else. So we tried again to turn that to our advantage and made a challenge out of it, which is that was probably the birth of us being more competitive in our videos. So it's nice that the audience can pick a side and decide on who to root for. So we both set out to get the best wildlife photo we could within our whatever radius it is daily walk to do with COVID. So Harry got barn owls in golden light. I got to know all my local mangy foxes and make friends with them. And then we tried to turn that into a story.
Yeah. So you've talked a little bit about kind of your entry point and working together. When did this start to take off, gain some traction, and move to a place where you're getting some big projects? And let's get into those big projects. Not saying that mangy foxes and barn owls are not big projects, but you guys have travelled abroad and done some seriously cool work. So let's get into that.
Thank you. It took a while. It hasn't taken off. I mean, you could argue that literally in the last...
We're on the runway. We're taking off. We're trying to get airborne, but we are full throttle ahead.
You're giving it a good go. So let's see your efforts. Tell me about the efforts, at least.
Okay, so yeah, there was a lot of winging it involved. So of course, all of the things we filmed, we tried to research them. They're very well researched, and then we'd sort of decide where we were going to go and film a subject, and then we just set out and basically see what came out of it. And that was our tactic for a good few years. Until we decided that actually it might be nice to try and tell some more impactful stories. So I believe it was one of our challenges, and this was probably 3 years ago now, that someone had been watching during lockdown, and it was a Polish researcher called Eva, and she lived in Iceland, so she was researching seabirds, and she messaged Ed And she said, I love your content. It got me out. It got me through lockdown with its sort of comedy. It was really tricky for those guys on an isolated island in Iceland. And she said that the research project she worked for, which was the South Icelandic Seabird Research Institute, they were looking for a photographer or photographers to help them with their puffin monitoring. So that was one of our first far or further flung foreign trips. And we set out to make this sort of series of films in Iceland, and that's when we, I think, maybe realised that it had some legs and that we might be able to tell some more impactful stories. Do you want to?
Yeah, exactly that. And around the same time, a remarkable man called Matt Staniak got in touch as well. So he was starting out a campaign to help save Windermere from illegal sewage pollution, and he knew it was very important to get people to hear the message, but also to evoke emotions within them and get people on board, and that's what would build the campaign into being anything useful at all, because he wanted to actually make change and not just make some noise and cry about it. He wanted people to back it and do something. So he reached out to us as well and said he enjoyed how the attempt at humour in our videos at least made for some engaging moments. So he wanted to try and translate that into his efforts. So we went up with him and filmed his first campaign video and then all the ones following as well. And we'd apply that same thinking of, we could walk down a river here and point out how it's not looking so good. Or we can make Matt try and kayak down the river, which is barely big enough to push a little toy boat down, and see how he gets stuck and which waterfalls he falls into. And it worked, because you can still get that important message across. And that doesn't mean that you can't also get across the human side and the fun side and be self-deprecating, which is incredibly important. Show that things go wrong, and when they do, you can laugh them off and still tell a great story.
And you speak to that point of being human at the end of the day. Are there any moments where you've actually felt perhaps emotion or anxiety? A lot of your content is focused about a strong message, but it's done in a light-hearted and positive way. Can you talk to me about times where maybe it was slightly more difficult and more challenging in that respect?
Yeah, so going back to Iceland, we were out there visiting 12 colonies around the country, and we were trying to see why essentially puffin populations were steadily decreasing, using our photos of the puffins carrying food, and it would be correlated to these declines. Anyway, we got to a particular island. We were there as conservationists, and it was the island of Dronge. It's absolutely incredible. If anyone's seen King Kong, it's got this incredibly dramatic cliff, which some of them are 250 feet high, and it's like a fortress. It sits in the bay that you approach. Anyway, as we sort of climbed up, it was quite a rugged area. We approached the cliff, and we saw this big sort of net. You caught the top of it as we wandered over, and as we got closer, we realised that it was a puffin hunter, and obviously for us, we were there to admire these species and help conserve them. And next thing, there's someone there sort of catching birds in the sky and dispatching them in front of us. And suddenly you're filled with all of these feelings that you're completely unprepared for in one of the most beautiful settings you can possibly imagine. And that really caught me by surprise, I think. And then we obviously started to delve into it a bit, and we were very careful about how we communicated that in the film. But yeah, that was particularly hard to watch, I think.
Yeah, it was a good reminder that not everything is great, even though we were having a fantastic time generally. It was quite an adventure, and this was probably 7 to 10 days into this thing, so we were quite exhausted, but we spent every single day in such close proximity to thousands and thousands of these birds, so they'd essentially become our colleagues. And so you wake up every morning in the tent, crawl out, go, morning, smile for the camera please, thank you, see you tomorrow.
I bet they did, I bet they looked gorgeous.
They were fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, they're superb. But then to turn up one day and then to see all of your new enamoured colleagues getting caught in massive sky nets, it's incredibly alarming, especially when you've built up that relationship with them over those days and you've got into their world and understand how they work. To then see that be obliterated right in front of you was, as Harry put it, it's very alarming, but we tried to communicate that. We didn't want to just ignore it, because that's not worth it, but you also don't want to come at it from our very biased angle, which is, of course, we love puffins.
It comes from
perhaps more than most people ever could, so of course we're going to find this very distressing. But we did speak to the hunters as well. We heard their side of it, and they would say, okay, we only do it for stuff that we will eat and it's not affecting the populations. But a lot of these were claims that it's hard to back them up with data, because the populations are going down, and maybe now any bit of help would be useful, and plucking them out of the sky and dispatching them it won't be contributing to helping the population. So you do have to bite your tongue sometimes in the face of people trying to justify something they find fun, which clearly does not actually help.
Were you going to add something there, Harry, on that?
Well, it was a small series that we made while we were in Iceland, and again, it was a very intimate sort of window, as it were, into Icelandic culture, and so we spent time with Dr. Hansen, who leads the project, and some of his colleagues, and I think it was midway through the trip, we were going past the salmon nets, weren't we? The fish nets, and again, it was quite a controversial subject, which we know in terms of Scotland, for example, it's a very damaging practice, very, very bad for fish, and the health of the marine environment in general. Anyway, we saw these things, and it was kind of refreshing to listen to it from the perspective of the Icelanders, and these were Norwegian-owned salmon farms, weren't they? So that was something else we touched on, and slightly heavier side of what the stories we're trying to tell.
And I think it's really important, and I'm sure you'll both shake your heads in unison, self-deprecating behaviour, but you're doing fantastic work, and I'm sure a lot of people do look to you as sort of pillars of inspiration, that you're young guys, you're doing something fun, you seem to be having fun doing it. So tell us a little bit about the process. I'm aware that we are kind of running out of time, I could talk to you guys forever, but some people might be inspired to perhaps start a YouTube, for themselves. So what does that process look like? How do you approach a project? Do you storyboard? Where do you divide the zoology versus the creativity?
Well, I suppose we've treated it, try to work on its strengths. So we know that we will not get the best footage of things, and we will not be able to make the most glossy-looking film by the end of it. But what we can do is try and add some character and attempt some humour. So we try and find situations where there will be a nature element to it, and you can always extract that because nature's so giving. There's always stories there. You can almost guarantee if you go and get stuck into something, a story will come out of it. But so we try and categorise it into which of the stories where have you put myself and Harry into it in a competitive way, which ones bring out the best of that, because that's our strong point. So we find those situations, we do a lot of research. Harry is incredibly well connected in the world of people who know where strange species are or where interesting stories are, and like he said, we start getting reached out to every now and then, like these Icelandic researchers. So we're very fortunate that we pick the thing we want to do, and then we insert ourselves into it, and then are quite happy just to let things happen and to see what will go on. And we're also very lucky that we can take risks that other establishments can't necessarily. So if you're producing something for broadcast, it's very difficult to convince someone to give any money to something which has a huge risk of turning into nothing. So an example of that is when we went to look for the only snowy owl in Scotland at the time.
Okay, let me just interrupt, because if anyone's listening that hasn't seen this viral reel, you've got to have a look at the Instagram, which I'll let you plug just at the end, but it is really worth watching. Back
okay, I won't ruin the ending then. But even the premise of going to look for this only bird with just two of us, no one would ever fund that, because you're just going to lose your money. But because it was off our own back, we just spent a weekend doing it, filming it ourselves. We could. And then we managed to pull a story out of it. So we're trying to find those stories as well, where perhaps other people haven't managed to do them because they couldn't warrant the risk, which is quite exciting. Again, it's turning that disadvantage of being just two of us into an advantage, in that we can take more risks.
Yeah, a small, agile crew, as it were.
Your words, not mine. Exactly. So there is an intimacy there, and I think that is the most beautiful thing that shines through. I don't know if anyone's called your work intimate, but the relationship that you two have and the way that you communicate science is very powerful, meaningful. If you did have to speak to the young generation or people that might be inspired about your content, what would you say in the face of a climate crisis, and how would you kind of speak your message of truth about communicating the natural world in all of its facets?
Well, yeah, it's important not to ignore the most glaring issues that are out there. So you're acting from a place of love, so you want to speak truthfully and freely. You do want to be biased, I suppose. Just stay hopeful and be curious about what it is you're looking to film.
Yeah, stay hopeful. Don't let all the doom and gloom messaging make you become too apathetic. You can still do stuff. You can make a difference. Get out there and try. And even if you're not doing it for those reasons, it's fun. It's so much fun. Just go and do it for that, and you'll happen to make a difference, or you'll grow a care for the world that you didn't know you had.
And just one thing that's come to me as you say that, Ed, is what can you speak to about failing? Because I imagine with some of the projects that you work on and some of the searching for rare and elusive wildlife, it doesn't always culminate in the end goal that you were hoping for. Are you happy to put that kind of stuff out? And what would speak to that?
Yeah, all the time. We fail so much.
We do fail quite
Why is that
regularly.
important though? Why is that important?
It's the most fun bit. It makes any success that comes is then that much sweeter. And we don't really see it as a failure. It's just if you're looking for something that's incredibly hard to find, say you're only going to see it 1 in 100 times, then every time you don't see it, you're just a 99th closer to then getting to see it. So just get through it and just accept that failures are a part of this. And if they weren't, then the thing wouldn't be worthwhile doing in the first place.
And as you say, it makes the reward that much sweeter.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you for being my podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you so much for having us and for sharing your platform with us. It's, very kind.
Pleasure. Nailed it. Absolutely loved speaking with Harry and Ed for the first ever live recorded episode of Specimens at Global Birdfair 2025. I'm sure you'll all agree that they both have a very bright future ahead of them, and I'm really looking forward to following what they get up to with their wildlife adventures. If you would like to watch their new film in collaboration with Leica Optics, this will be available from the 2nd of September 2025, and you'll be able to watch it on various platforms, including their YouTube, the Leica website, and their website. All of these links, plus the additional links to find Harry and Ed and all of the Gone Feral platforms, are attached to the show notes. So you know what to do. As ever, a big thanks from me, but the biggest thank you to Harry and Ed and to you guys for listening. I'll see you next time with Beaver Reintroduction with Dr. Sean McCormack.
This is your before and after story. Southeastern College can help you prepare for a secure and fulfilling career in the growing healthcare field. We offer a wide range of careers to choose from, so whether you want to be a medical assistant, medical billing and coding specialist, nurse, surgical technologist, or another healthcare career, we've got you covered. Become a vital part of a healthcare team and make a real difference. Southeastern College, your future is bright. Visit sec.edu to get started.